Alrighty, looks like we are live. What's up, folks?
Might be a different mic.
What's that?
I think maybe switch your mic.
It says that it's on the right one.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah. Is it? Let me see here. Actually, hang on. I've been moving everything. So we were supposed to go live yesterday, and then I just ran out of time. I wasn't able to, so we had to cancel. And Steven got a nail in his tire. All kinds of stuff happened yesterday.
Several nails.
Several nails? Jeez.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yep.
and then tell us about that here in a second. Then there, that should be better now. And now, how does that sound? Does that sound better?
There we go.
Yeah, that's it there. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Then we were supposed to go live here at 1 today. This is when I told Steven to meet up here to go live. And what is it now? It's like 1:45. And we're just finally getting out here. I've been in the middle of trying to rebuild out my studio in a new room, and moving into the master bedroom here and occupying half the master bedroom. And it's been just every project takes way longer than I ever want it to. So I've been dragging through all of this stuff and barely got in here by 1 o'clock, and then I wasn't even ready then. So, but we are out. We are here now. We are ready to go. And I think we've got a pretty interesting topic that we're going to discuss today, the post-libertarian question. I see a lot of people talking about post-libertarians, and I actually tweeted something out earlier today asking what term people like to use to refer to the post-libertarian phenomenon. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But we'll give it a few minutes here and let anybody else who wants to watch live, let them pile in. So in the meantime, why don't you tell us about your tires yesterday, Steven?
I have a knack for just finding sharp objects to give me leaks in my consistently tire. Like I just at every tire, and I got them rotated obviously, and anytime I get it rotated, I will find a new nail. And like I saw the nail yesterday. And I was like, okay, it's right in the middle, no problem. And then, like the next time I parked, there was like just like another object. Clearly needed to be painted, but kind of fuck it.
Did I lose you?
Are you seeing things?
Yeah, my whole screen just went.
Did you lose me?
Completely bonkers. But I think that I've still got you.
I hope so. I'm here for you. No matter what.
I appreciate that. Sorry about this, folks.
Okay.
I'm hoping everything is plugged in right. I reconnected it all just before Steven connected with me today. So let's see. All right, yeah, it looks like everything's still good. Having the delay is brutal because if there's something wrong with the stream, I have to try to open up the stream somewhere else to try to see, and then there's this few minutes of terror as I'm waiting for the stream elsewhere to catch up to wherever the point was that I thought things went bad while I'm waiting to see if everything's good. But it looks like everything's still good.
What you have to understand is that having the delay really causes a problem because, you'll see that something's wrong, but then you have to wait for the stream to catch up.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Exactly. Okay. So let us know, folks, if things are better, if the delay has improved. My poor little computer is just slogging here trying to make everything work, and I'm hoping that that's not the hang up. So I'm going to try to get this stream pushed out onto social media since Twitter does not do live streaming anymore. And so let's type this out. We're going to say live now. And that is tweeted out. There we go. Okay. So as you guys, seems good now. Good. As you guys can see, things are the setup in here is just a little bit different, and this is not, my studio has not reached its final form, but I had to throw something together real quick to try to make it work for today. And so on display here is a wonderful piece of artwork. As soon as we connected, Steven said, "Is that digital? What is that?" And I said, "No, it's not digital. It's just a finger painting. It's an amazing finger painting from my delightful little boy, soon to be a world famous artist, as well as the new emperor of this entire planet, Eastwood Erickson himself." So look on and admire his wonderful handiwork. And yeah, as Amy says in the comments here, please like and share this stream. Subscribe to our channel. This is a fun little show, and I had a call yesterday with. I'm going to say this: I had a call with a branding expert yesterday on branding the show and getting a logo put together and everything. And I think it's going to be pretty cool. We had a good conversation about what we're trying to do with the show, what all we want to accomplish, the message that we're wanting to deliver, and how we're wanting it to affect people's lives. And we talked about some pretty fun stuff. So I'm excited for everything we're going to accomplish here. And yeah, anyways. Okay, so share with SJW. Oh, no. Do not share the show with SJWs. That's one thing. I haven't said this in a few episodes. Please don't share this show with anyone who you think will not like it. If somebody's going to come here and complain, I don't want to talk to stupid people. So my goal is to create an echo chamber of really smart people who all agree with me. And that's what we want to do. I know Steven feels the same way. He in fact does not even want you to follow him on Twitter at Messina Inc. He does not want to have any sort of an audience whatsoever. I want a couple people. So do us a favor, and if you share the show, share it with someone who's going to agree with us and tell us how smart we are. That'll make us happy.
Yeah, this show is only for fellow liberty lovers, such as us. And I think Matt posted this silly little question on Twitter about what to call, what you call yourself. And I think, I haven't seen the results, but I'm certain that it's at least 99% liberty lovers. And if anyone disagrees in the comments, I'd love to hear about it. But I think that's pretty much the consensus, right, folks?
I want to do. The more that I, especially after this conversation yesterday, the more that I think about this, the more I don't want anything to do with the terms liberty or freedom. They are at this point. It's saying liberty is in a, especially like in a political context, is akin to saying equality. Like it's a meaningless word. It doesn't have any. It's like you say it and people think they know what you're talking about, but everyone kind of has a different definition. And as you try to drill down, you can never actually come to any sort of a consensus or any sort of like concrete understanding about what it means. So as we were talking about like what we want the logo to look like and all that, 100%, there will be no liberty or freedom or anything like that anywhere near any of the logo or any of the show's branding or anything like that. We are anti-liberty here. That's our stance.
Well, in related news, if you want to be the co-host of the show, there'll be a vacancy because I'm firmly committed to Team Liberty Lovers. I was under the impression that Matt would not be making a unilateral decision to get that out of all the.
Well, I know that Steven is a huge fan of libertarians. His favorite thing in the world is following libertarians on social media and observing just how competent and effective and mature their messaging is, and like every idea that they deliver is just like in its polished final form,
Yep. Just I want to remind everybody to post pictures of all the guns that you 3D print. Tell people how you 3D print guns, and then and resist arrest if it ever happens, which is definitely going to at some point. Be sure to resist arrest because it would be a principled thing to do.
Because you're all such edgy boys. You're all. I'm sure all of these major social or major libertarian personalities in social media, they're always running into the cops.
That's a fun question. Of any major, anyone who has like an influence in libertarian world, of anyone who purports anything to do with like resisting arrest or resist that or take it lying down or don't take it lying. I don't know. Come up with one person who you think would put forth any meaningful resistance, and like in a basis where like it was like a one-on-one or like, they're presumably outnumbered by the police in some sort of scenario. I can't think of anyone, but boy, they do talk a lot of shit, don't they? And I don't know, man. I really like it. Just, I don't know. You get to be old man talking to you, but I don't know. You just start to you kind of see people who like should do and should know better. Especially if they dedicate their whole existence to these topics and kind of presumably how the world works. But this whole show is about how they don't understand how the world works, maybe, or just like grifting like crazy. But if their fan base is like 20 something, young men or whatever, for the most part, just getting them all whipped up in like no real place to put the emotion, just like, I don't know, man, it's pretty irresponsible. So
especially when your fan base is not only 20 something young men, but it's going to be 20 something young men who are you're likely to be overrepresented among that crowd are 20 something young men who don't fare so well with the ladies. Let's just say it that way. Autism reigns supreme in libertarian circles of all. Like, read Jonathan Haidt's The Righteous Mind. He talks about the values. There's the different moral foundations from moral foundations theory. There's these 5, and then he added the 6th one is liberty. These different metrics, I guess, that of values that people have, and conservatives and liberals value different things, and just explicitly. So things like loyalty or cleanliness or some of these things are things that liberals have no value for whatsoever. But then maybe, I don't remember exactly what they are, mercy or something like that is one that's big for liberals. So there's a reason that they just all talk past each other all the time. But libertarians are like if you look at their moral profile, it's like contrarian, doesn't give a shit about loyalty, like in-group loyalty, and doesn't care about other people's feelings, like no compassion. Like, that's basically their profile. So these are going to be people who are overwhelmingly going to tend to be like incels or autists. Or let's put it this way, the incels and the autists are likely going to find themselves in libertarian circles more than others, just because of the nature of the ideology being an extremely rational, more, I don't want to say it's not more intelligent, it's more heady. And because it's like, in terms of street smarts, they have like none. There's no street smarts whatsoever within the majority of the libertarian circles, which is a big problem. But they have there's a lot of book knowledge in it. And so you're going to get guys in there who are I'll just be blunt. They're not getting laid. And if they're not getting laid, their decision making is going to be flawed. They're going to be tend to be a lot more impulsive. I mean, this is the problem. This is why in Islam, why the promise of the virgins is so compelling, because there isn't like tons of sexual promiscuity in Islamic circles. And so men who aren't married are not getting laid, they're going to be a lot more. They have the testosterone going crazy and everything. And this is a problem that's increasingly plaguing American society, because I don't remember the exact numbers, but I just saw a thing recently that was like, over the last 10 years, like, how many sexual partners have you had, or how many times you had sex, or something like that. And for young men, like Zoomer, millennial kind of men in the 18 to 30, 35 range, it's like exploded. The number of men who haven't had sex at all. They're just not. Nobody is getting laid. And that's not healthy. When you get that dynamic starting, that's a recipe for a very unstable society, because men who feel like they can't get laid start getting desperate, and they start doing desperate things. So tying this back in, if your audience is likely to have that sort of profile among it, then encouraging people to resist arrest and, that every cop is evil and all that, it doesn't matter whether it's right. What matters is what's adaptive, and having the behavior that every single cop is evil, and every single encounter that you have with them, he's infringing upon your rights and you should resist him. If you approach life with that mindset, it's much more likely to end badly for you than to not. So for prominent libertarian commentators, I don't want to call people out by name necessarily, but prominent libertarian commentators who are they're LARPing. It's a LARP. Like, if you guys actually encounter a cop on the street, You're not going to sit there and argue with him. You're not going to resist. You're not going to like claim your rights. You're just going to cooperate peacefully, because that's what the vast majority of normal people do. They just, oh, whatever, I'll just cooperate and get it over with. And that's what you should do. That's not where you fight the war. You don't fight the war by getting in a fight with a cop because you think that he's violating the Constitution, whatever. It's just, it's the autism is too much. And I think that we're going to start seeing that sort of rhetoric. We're going to start seeing young men who do things that get them in a lot of hot water, targeted as political dissidents and having their lives ruined. And we're going to find out that they were motivated by that sort of talk, that sort of thing is what drove them to that sort of desperation.
In like, it's just like, a lot of these people will invoke, the name of like Duncan Lemp. And to the point, it makes you really wonder, is this for Twitter followers? Why are we talking about Duncan Lemp? Because you're encouraging behavior seemingly that almost assures that like some of your audience is going to wind up getting Duncan Lemped. Right. So if you think it's a bad thing, I think you maybe have like a different message. I don't know. I think the deal with the cops is the cops are going to do what the cops do. And like, you see what the cops do now, and you have to know that and then take it from there. Right. And that's the beginning, middle, and end of the story.
The lesson from Duncan Lemp is not the state is evil. That's a given. Like, that just, of course, the incentives are all there for that to be the case. The lesson from Duncan Lemp is don't put yourself in a position to have what happened to Duncan Lemp happen to you. This is kind of at the core of a lot of of at least our issues with libertarians in general, is not living in the world of shoulds. Living in the world of oughts rather than the world that is. The world exists. The world is full of evil. The world is full of tyrants. It's like conservatives. The reason that conservatism is progressivism driving the speed limit is because conservatives love to just harp on progressives for being hypocrites. And when a conservative goes after a progressive for being a hypocrite, what they're doing is they're saying you're not being a good enough progressive. And that's why the conservative winds up falling into the camp of, oh, look how good of a progressive I am. And you continue this trend leftward. The libertarians find themselves in a very similar sort of boat, because they try to relate to they treat the state as if the problem with the state is that it doesn't stick to the Constitution. Like, that's the problem with the state. Is the Constitution was great, and if we could get back to constitutional government, that would be fantastic. So they judge the state according to like the Constitution, or according to what the state claims to be. So they say, well, you're supposed to protect me, but you don't. And they get mad at it. You're the sucker who thinks the state is supposed to protect you. You're the one who's like, you're saying the state's not doing a good enough job being a state, but then you also claim to be opposed to the state. Just assume the state's evil. Assume the state's going to do what it's going to do and build your life around it. That's the ultimate message of this show, is that libertarians want to sit around and complain about how evil the state is, and they want to build a political movement around telling people they don't need the state. But they don't deal with the world as it actually is, and they don't provide people an alternative. People keep choosing the state because the state is the only thing around that offers the services that people want from a government. Security, protection, safety, law enforcement, all of those types of things. The state is the only thing out there that's providing those services. So of course people keep choosing it. The state exists as it does because the market has demanded a state that exists as it does. And the counter to that will be, well, the state doesn't let anything else exist. And the state state education programs have taught people to want the state like that. So it's the state acting in its own interest. Well, of course it is. So what educational institutions have you created to teach? Like, how have you taken over the educational system to teach people the message you want them to have? Oh, you haven't? You haven't created an alternative? Then what are you complaining about? People are choosing what's available to them. They're choosing what they've been trained to choose. And if you want them to stop choosing what they've been trained to choose, you have to train them to choose something different. And that's part of what being king-pilled is realizing that. You get this thing where guys like walk around each other and they're like, "Hey, what's up, king?" And it's like every man is a king to himself. He's like the king of his own world. Everyone like strives or aspires to be king-like. It's a thing that seems noble to people. And there's a reason for that. It's because we're made in the image of the king. And the role in the Bible, you hear a lot about how the like as Christ is to the church, so a husband is to be to his wife. A man is the king of his household. He's supposed to act as a king for his household. In the same way, a king acts as the king for his society, for his region, for his community. That dynamic, that relational dynamic is hardwired into us. That's baked into our DNA. That's why in like every single social arrangement across human history has always eventually tended toward one single powerful figure at the top. That's why people are drawn by the hero narrative, that hero myth. That's what that gets people, because the dynamic of the great man who saves his culture and then governs and leads by example. That's as old as time in human psychology. So that's for, if you've never listened to the show before, this is the angle that we're coming from. We see ourselves as post-libertarian. Stephen and I, once upon a time, we bought the whole libertarian thing. We went down that path. Stephen says he kind of didn't, but he's talking a big game. You listen to Part of the Problem. There's this stretch that people go through. Like I've been kind of playing around with this idea lately that as people like to say with libertarians, like the difference between a libertarian and an ANCAP is about 6 months. And because they're usually using libertarian as shorthand for like a minarchist, so they say it's about 6 months. And what I'm saying now is that the time between a libertarian and a monarchist is, I don't know, 18 months. If you're continuing to study and learn, and you don't act like you've arrived, if you don't act like you've solved all the world's problems because you read Murray Rothbard, if you remain open to new ideas and in continuing to educate yourself and encountering new material and continuing to unpack these ideas, it's just a matter of time before you wind up essentially where we are, which is recognizing that Rothbardianism is right-wing. Rothbardianism is a right-wing notion. To have a Rothbardian society, you must reach a point where left-wing people have no impact whatsoever on the politics of the region. As Moldbug says, Mencius Moldbug in Unqualified Reservations, he says that something like just, he says we have to reach the point where leftists just have no impact on the local politics. And he said that doesn't mean that they can't exist. Like, of course they can exist. It's just that they have no impact whatsoever on politics. And when they walk down the street, people point and laugh at them. Ah, look at that guy, he's a leftist. Like, leftism is fundamentally promotion of chaos, which is destruction of stability, which is the enemy of, if you want, freedom and liberty. That's when a Rothbardian describes liberty, what he's describing is a society where property rights are upheld absolutely, where the law is enforced absolutely. And when I say the law, I mean capital L law, which is ultimately God's law. They like to call it natural law. They say, oh, well, humans have these are natural rights. Okay, well, if they came from nature, you can call it what you want. So just say nature is your God. Either way, you're still describing like a supreme force of love that is from whence people's rights are derived. But if you continue down the Rothbardian path, you'll go, if you do it honestly, intellectually honestly, you'll go the direction that Mencius Moldbug did, and ultimately he kind of carved a path that Hoppe started that direction, and then Moldbug continued beyond Hoppe. As we said in the last episode, Stephen said something about like he kept going after the bus stopped. That's what Hoppe stopped the bus, and that's basically as far as that's at Hoppe, you've reached beyond the fringe of what's acceptable in polite society. Anarcho-capitalism, like being an ANCAP, is acceptable in polite society. You're going to get grief, but nobody is going to come persecute you because you're an ANCAP, because you have no influence. You have no power. You're a fringe. You're a fringe ideology. You're just far right. That's how they'll just call you far right. They'll lump you in with the rest of them. If you go beyond that, though, that's when all of the red bells, all the bells start ringing, and all the red lights start flashing. If you go beyond Hoppe, and it's kind of too Hoppe, but so Curtis Yarvin, he didn't give a shit. He was like, well, I'm just going to keep going. And what he recognized is that if you want to explore those kinds of ideas, if you want to think about bringing that sort of thing into the mainstream, the first thing you have to do is ensure that you are not threatening to the regime. You have to maintain a status of posing no threat whatsoever to the regime. That's why I've seen a narrative recently, and we're going to get into this a little more in the future, but I've seen this narrative recently that Yarvin is going to be basically that he's going to be the one who leads the right-wing response that gives you basically like the rise of the second coming of the Nazis or something like that. And somebody who believes that is someone who clearly hasn't read Curtis Yarvin, because I don't know of many people in the world who have put more time and effort and words into solving the problem of political violence and trying to ensure that the collapse of the regime is not a violent, bloody collapse. That's the singular goal for Curtis Yarvin. He's attempting to engineer the creation of the post-liberal world, and to derive some sort of stability and peace out of that collapse. But part
in
of
the
that,
writings also, in the writings also, though, there's a lot that kind of talks about how one of the potential avenues that counter activism can lead to is something in the vein of fascism, or something in the lines of another Hitler. So that's like very acknowledged in the writings, and I mean, he takes some pretty great length to, like you say, try to engineer against that. So it's not like this isn't some sneaky mission for like a Jewish guy to bring about Hitler too. Yeah. He definitely he addresses it, and part of what he advocates is like I think we talked about last episode was pacifism, but
yes.
just this whole idea of realizing that you have zero power, you hold no hand in this situation that we're in,
and that you should hold no power. You should have none.
Right. Yes.
Because
sort
political
of the exact
power is not a
opposite.
human right.
It's the exact opposite of sort of what the libertarians are kind of doing right now, or
Right.
the LP is doing right now,
right.
Which is getting more people, inserting more energy into the situation without actually any kind of real plan, which, like that kind of, while basically becoming like propaganda that can be used by the other side, all the like the flak vests and the guns everywhere, and basically just becoming the caricature of what they're going to be told to be by the other side. But like his big step one is just being on some Zen shit with the whole thing.
Yeah, that's why I think that he and Vin Armani are just, their messages are just tailor made for each other. They go together perfectly. On their face they seem opposed to one another. On their face they seem like the antithesis to one another. But I see a way that that if you blend their perspectives together, it's like how did was it you or was it Adam Patrick who said it was like the Large Hadron Collider? It was like CERN taking these two particles and just like smashing them together, and you might get a black hole. Or you might create a whole new universe. That's basically the dynamic of the two of them. And And imagine Curtis giving a Hitler-like speech. Yeah, I definitely want to try to get Moldbug on the show. I'm expecting it's going to be a long time before he's doing interviews again because his wife unfortunately just passed away. But that's definitely in the works if we can. Well, when we little sidebar here, as soon as we get the all of the branding and everything figured out for the show, and we get everything uploading on an audio platform, we've got a whole long list of interviews already of people that we've already reached out to, we've already connected with and nailed down, and it's going to be like a freaking murderer's row of just amazing conversations one after each other. So right now we're kind of just we're biding our time until we can get a few ducks in a row and start that process. But I think you guys are really going to enjoy some of the conversations that we have. But anyway, so yeah, his wife is only 50, and she had some sort of a, a heart condition or something like that. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but she passed away and left him with their 10-year-old and 13-year-old. It's rough. And he said, he posted on his Substack that there will be no more content until May. And I was like, that soon? Like I wouldn't be surprised if he's out longer than that. And he deserves it. The guy is incredibly prolific, and I imagine that he probably just his way of managing with this probably is going to be just like redoubling his on and producing even more content, because that's how you can tell that this is how he works these ideas out, is by writing them. And anyway, so I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. I disagree with him on some stuff, but who cares? It ultimately, I have a lot of respect for the effort that he's put forth in fleshing out all these ideas. The guy is easily on par with Rothbard in terms of his scholarship, the amount of reading that he's done. I've never seen anybody who's read as much as he has. And I just really encourage you, even if you've read some of his stuff, I would encourage you to read more, because there are so many different like avenues and interstices within the ideology that he's fleshing out, that there's just so much content, and so much of it is so obvious once you hear it. Once you see him like break down a specific concept, it's like, how did I not see that before? This is just so simple, but it reveals to you the extent to which we've been completely conditioned and dumbed down. Like, our brains have been reduced in their capacity significantly. I saw a video or a picture recently it was like in the 50s or 60s. It was a 9th grade class. And these 9th graders looked like they were in their late 20s. They were extremely mature looking for 9th graders. And someone said this is a reflection of what life was like before we were drowning in endocrine disruptors. And so, I mean, now there's the birth control in the water, and all these plastics and stuff that were around all the time, like receipts, a receipt paper. If you get a receipt printed off at the store and you touch that receipt paper, it's terrible. It's like, it's a massive endocrine disruptor. So hormonally, we've been getting just trashed. And this is a consequence of this is going to trigger people, but this is a consequence of unbridled capitalism. This is where capitalism has been treated as if it's inherently good, as if technological growth and expansion and production and maximizing production and profit and all of that, as if that is the end all be all.
You clearly don't know anything about the free market. You see, Matt.
Educate me, Stephen. Tell me about the free market. Oh, you don't want to?
Oh, for real? No, I'm not.
Oh, okay.
No. Well, it just the libertarian, this ideal of, what people will be incentivized to do, just like in a truly free market, no one would ever print receipts that had anything that could potentially, harm the population at large, because free market, because solution to all the problems. But yeah, it's expanding beyond that. That the solution for everything is the free market really is kind of empowering. It is freeing. Like, I've been jealous for like the longest time of people who like trash talk capitalism. It is really cool if you especially get like a little like hair whip. Also, it's like, capitalists. I mean, it's worth it. That's worth it alone. Jump in, trash capitalism. You know, and like observe problems from like the point of view of like human nature. You know, and just like recognize that if you're here, you are not the descendants of only the most virtuous people in the world. Some people cut in line for food.
Yep. That's a
I
really good way of
interrupted you
framing
with a
it.
joke.
No, that was great. That was a really great way of framing
I
it.
lifted that from I think Colin Quinn. It's fine.
Oh, well, I won't tell anyone. The this actually strikes right at the heart of one of the biggest issues with the libertarian perspective, and that is that the idea that economic growth is an unalloyed good, just like ipso facto. That if you can do something more efficiently and you can produce more, that is just by its nature good. And this is born out of the idea that economics is the root of all things. But there's things that are much, much more important than economics. This is what leads this is where you get the problem of, say, a company that's like, oh, well, it's cheaper to do business in China, so we're going to move all of our operations to China and we're going to produce everything there. And the libertarian looks at it and says, hey, great, they could do it cheaper and they could produce more and they'll make more money and everyone else benefits and we all get. But here's the problem. Just because everybody improves economically doesn't mean they benefit, because economics is not the end all be all. What are the side effects of this company relocating to China? Well, now we don't just have to deal with the American government, we have to deal with the Chinese government. It's brought that dynamic into play because now this company is going to be incentivized to behave differently to get along with the Chinese government. Additionally, it means more people in the U.S. they're getting their lives upended. And yes, they need to go learn new skills, and they should have been in position where they aren't dependent on these other people. Sure, all of that is just fine and great. That's totally true in the abstract. Like in hypothetical land, that's completely true. In the real world, economic instability economics isn't the end all be all, but economic instability is one of the worst things that you can have. This is why people say, well, income inequality, people deserve to have as much money as they want, and income inequality is like, who cares? Who cares if someone else has more and you have less? The problem is people do care. That's just how people are wired. The people who don't care about that are the exception. This has been proven many times over that if you give someone the option to, what is it? It's if you have, would you rather have get $10 more, but everyone around you got $50 more? Or would you rather get 100, or would you rather get $10 more and everybody stay the same, or get $10 more and everyone else gets 50 more? It was something like that. Basically, people judge themselves relative to their circumstances around them, the people around them. So if I got more, yeah, I would be better off. But if everyone else got even more than I did, then they're even more better off. And when people approach this idea of, like, from the libertarian perspective, they look at this as as if it's just a problem of greedy people, that people are just greedy, and that they shouldn't compare themselves to others. They should just be happy because they're better off. But the fact of the matter is that just isn't. That's just, people are not that way. People that are put in a situation like that are going to respond poorly. They're going to get resentful, and they're going to start rumbling. You're going to get instability. You're going to get people who are less likely to trust each other and be less. You don't want massive income or wealth inequality because it makes a society unstable. It's not that it's morally wrong, it's that it's impractical. It doesn't matter how wealthy the society is itself. Look at, like, right now, today, homeless people have smartphones. In an objective sense, poor people today are extremely well off compared to poor people in the past. But that doesn't make any difference to them. They're still just as unhappy, which means they're going to be as inclined to follow some sort of a tyrant or dictator who's going to promise them the world. This is why, if you place economics as the end all be all, you're begging for a massive state. You're begging for corruption and tyranny. This is just the nature of human beings, of human organization. there are things that are more important and of more value than economics. And that's,
Yeah,
I don't remember
man.
exactly how we got into that conversation, but that was,
Yeah.
go ahead. You were going to say
That's what
something?
I've been saying. That's what I've been
Oh,
saying for the longest time, is that we just, like, it's not all about money. It's like energy, and like it's expanding your paradigm beyond just like, I'm more than like what's in my bank account. You know what I mean? Okay. So I just wanted to just really, it turns me on when you start all this talk, and I also feel left out, so I wanted to jump in.
that was, were you like trying to be someone in particular or just a stereotype?
That's a little bit of liberal Steve right there. Usually, liberal Steve spends most of his time just trying to endear himself to women of color, college age women of color, because he's college age liberal Steve, or maybe shortly post college, but still lives in the college town. That's the character. Yeah.
He still lives in a college town and he's still trying to pick up college girls 20 years later.
Yes. Not 20. Let's not make it real. Let's. That's not liberal, Steve.
Popular Liberty's got a good point in here. He said, if I have more than you, then I can attack you and take what's yours. By definition, you don't have the power to stop me because I have more. Right. All of this stuff winds up being relative, and it all comes down to power, really. When you're talking about economic organization and legal organization, power rules the day. Nothing matters. It doesn't matter what your values, what your merit, whatever your value system is. It doesn't matter if you don't have the power to enforce it. That's just the fact of the matter. Popular Liberty has a video series that he started on this term he coined called archotropism, and I need to watch his first video. I'll say here I haven't watched his first video. I only watched the second one. I'll put the video in the comments here, but he's on to something with this archotropism comment or concept, and I'll wait for him in the comments here to define it. But it was funny. I googled earlier archotropism, and for whatever reason, Graham Hancock was one of the first results. There's like very few results because Popular Liberty here is the one who coined it just recently. But Graham Hancock came back, which he was thrilled by, and anything with Graham Hancock in it makes me happy. But basically, the archotropism is a commentary on the dynamics of power, and that ultimately everyone gets societies all organized around power, and it doesn't matter what your value system is. You have to have the power to enforce it, otherwise you're just kind of just shooting your mouth. Bruce here says that winners and losers are reality, economics are a tool. Yeah, winners and losers are a reality, but people who are losers get very unhappy and they start acting out. So you want to have as few of them as possible. And losing doesn't just mean having less money. There's more. There are more dynamics to. There are more silos here that are being measured against each other. Ultimately, people want to be secure. They also want to have a local or national identity. They want to have an identity that they attach themselves to that gives them meaning. And as you water that down in pursuit of, the all powerful dollar, as you degrade the system, the not the economic system, but the philosophical or the psychological or the religious system that binds people together, you're going to eventually lose the economics as well, because as people become less trusting of each other, as they become less incentivized to do their best and to be productive and to provide value to the world, as they lose that incentive because they're weak and soft and because they're losers, then eventually they're going to create the instability and the crime and everything that's going to create the vacuum for the tyrant to step in. And just telling them to just suck it up because there's winners and losers is, when you understand the way that these dynamics work, you recognize that you are directly contributing to the call for the tyrant that you claim to be opposing. This is why the libertarian, back to Jonathan Haidt, the libertarian impulse to for lack of empathy, for lack of compassion, the inability to sympathize with people who see the world differently, or to recognize that these sorts of dynamics are inevitable and that you have to manage them. You can't just say, ah, fuck it. This is part of the reason why just getting more people to hear about libertarians isn't going to improve our situation at all. If anything, it's going to make it worse, because people actively reject the libertarian message because the libertarian message is shitty, and it only appeals to libertarians. It doesn't appeal to anyone else. Until it starts actually solving other people's problems and not just telling them, fuck you, deal with your own problems, it's going to continue to fail. And this is part of what has occurred to people who now see themselves as post-libertarian. And what I'm hoping to do is to get enough people like that to stop trying to save libertarianism, to let it, like, libertarianism it needs to die. It needs to, or at least be contained within its own sphere. It needs to not spread, because people who think like libertarians create socialists, ultimately. Because when they think they operate like libertarians, they feed into a system that creates and incentivizes poverty and malcontent and depression and resentment and all of these sorts of things. Because people want a system that works for them, and libertarians have made it their identity to tear down a system that people think works for them. So ultimately, there's a great video by I think it was Academic Agent on why libertarianism creates why libertarians create socialists. And he had a specific syllogism, and I've mentioned it on a past episode. I don't remember what it was. It just popped into my head. So Popular Liberty here. He said, archotropism and thermodynamics mostly work the same way, but not always. Thermodynamics can go both ways. Archotropism really only goes one way. That's why I didn't call it archodynamics. It just goes one way. Okay. So archo means ruler and tropos means to turn. Archotropism are the laws of nature that contribute to why people turn towards rulers. So that's yeah, there you go. That's a good that should give you enough. If you're interested in this, go look up Popular Liberty. Archotropism is spelled ARCHOTROPISM. And I'll put it in the show notes after the show here. Just catching up on the comments here. I'm not opposed to tyrants or being a slave, but only God fills that role of worthy. We are slaves to God, and He is a worthy master. Right. That's actually that's part of the king-pilled notion is recognizing that the idea of human rights is a lie. Humans have no rights. We have a right to be destroyed. We have a right to not exist. The only way that we do exist is by the grace of God. And we exist to be imagers of God, to image God into the world. Individualism, this notion of the sanctity or the sovereignty of the individual self, of the ego, is what has actually that's what libertarians cling to. They cling to this idea of the like individual. The individual is the smallest minority. We need to be like you should be free to do whatever you want as long as you don't harm other people. All of this sort of rhetoric, this is the intellectual framework upon which as Vin Armani has termed them, the Church of Woke. This is the intellectual framework they built upon. They've taken liberalism, this notion of individual freedom, they've taken it to its logical conclusion. Libertarianism is helpless, is powerless to combat this postmodern, what Jordan Peterson calls it, postmodern neo-Marxist. And people freak out and say, oh, there's no such thing. But it actually, the terms do go well together when you understand the dynamic of what's happening. But libertarianism, with respect to this leftist insanity, basically just serves as an empty suit to be populated by people doing whatever they want. When you say people can do whatever they want as long as they don't harm anybody else, all that people hear is do whatever they want, because harm is relative. Now you have to argue about what's harm, what constitutes aggression, what constitutes violence, yada, yada, yada. You've lost. You're trying to debate people who aren't even interested in your opinion. So unless you have the power to enforce your will upon them, you've just created your own demise. And this gets back to the libertarians create socialists. Because when you place as your God individual freedom, when you say that liberty means like no rulers in essence, when you conflate those things, you've now left yourself powerless to combat people who are going to use their liberty to do whatever they want and basically test the boundaries until you're willing to fight back. So he also did, Popular Liberty also did 2 videos on why Ancapistan doesn't work, using an actual example of Ancapistan that failed. He does it from a story from the Bible, which is pretty interesting. And Bruce says, the hard part is I'm forced into playing the game of society. I play as an individual. That's the thing. You don't play as an individual. That's born out of the idea that we play as individuals is born out of the tabula rasa, the blank slate notion that we enter the world and we play on our own rules, making decisions of our own accord, but we don't. You're not even conscious of your own decisions for the first several months or years of your life. And by then, you've been wired. You have been you've had your settings installed and you're operating according to an operating system that was put into you. So you don't operate as an individual. You operate as a product of your surroundings and your history. And you weren't the one who decided those things for the first majority of the majority of your formative years. You didn't decide any of those things. So you're not operating as an individual. You're operating as a product of your culture, as a product of your society. And I mean broadly. I mean at a more of a micro level. Your family, your church, your school, whatever your local organization is, you are a product of that. And you operate according to the constraints that were baked into you then. As you get older, you can start, you can post hoc go back and you can like reformat them, and you can update your political operating system, but you're always operating from that original foundation, and you're reacting to things that were already put into you. Eventually, you may reach the point of like self-actualization, which is quite, that's not the fulfillment of the individual, that's the release of the individual. Self-actualization is when people stop identifying with their ego and they just let it go. And there's a reason that people, when they experience this type of thing, they start saying things kind of like feeling at one with everything, or realizing that I'm connected to everything else. And this has been, in the past, has always been treated as kind of like hippie woo-woo stuff. But the leading edge of quantum mechanics is of the study of quantum mechanics and astrophysics and stuff. It's all stuff that's over my head, but I can understand some of the implications of it, which is that they're basically coming to the conclusion that we're all connected, that we're all made of the same stuff that's literally connected to each other. So this just kind of puts yet another nail in the coffin of the idea that we operate as individuals, that we are individuals that have free will, and all of this. I want to do an episode specifically addressing the free will concept because I think that it's a myth. I think it doesn't exist. But I need to put those thoughts in order better before I just launch into it. We've got a poppin' comment section going on today. Jared says Jesus' teaching made this individualism stuff possible, even if he didn't exactly promote it. Jesus' teaching didn't. People's interpretation of Jesus' teaching did. This is a similar, not to compare Moldbug to Jesus, but relating back to what we were talking about a minute ago, this idea that Moldbug is going to lead the fascist revolution or whatever. I think that there are people who say he's not necessarily going to lead it, but it's going to be people using his ideas. If someone's using Moldbug's ideas to orchestrate a fascist coup, they're not using Moldbug's ideas, because he says explicitly that if you reach fascism, you failed. That's the definition of failure, is you reached fascism. Because fascism is just a corrupted version of democracy, which is his entire thing is all about how evil democracy is and what we have to do to try to move beyond it. So in the same sense, he's written what he's written. He's put his ideas out there. People can take them and do whatever they want with them, but you can't hold that against him. In the same sense here with individualism, people took Jesus's teachings and arrived at this individualism stuff, but they brought in things from outside Jesus' teaching to try to make that possible. And I'll get into that more in the episode where we talk about free will. Libertarians are the autistic teammates that argue that the rules of the game are wrong, so they shouldn't play. That's a pretty good way of putting it. Popular liberty at it again. Fear of the Lord is the beginning of fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Okay. I'm gonna prioritize doing this individualism and free will episode because it seems like we're ready for it. Popular liberty says he'll debate me on free will. I'm convinced it's absolutely essential to the underlying meta narrative. Okay, yeah, we can do that. We need to make sure first that we settle on a definition of what free will means, because I think that free will doesn't exist as it's commonly discussed, as people commonly talk about it. But I think that there's a dynamic of free will and that we have to exercise it, but we exercise it by not exercising it. That'll give you a little peek into the angle that I wanted to take on it. But anyways, I'm going to go back to this tweet so I put this tweet out. I said, what's your favorite term for describing people who currently see themselves as post-libertarian? And I don't have an answer for this. This is something I've been kind of thinking. I mean, this is what King Pilled is basically about, exploring the ideas of post-libertarianism. But I wanted to I wanted to get an idea of what other people were thinking, and kind of where I figured the people who would comment on this are either going to be the type of person who would listen to a show like this, or they're very, very much not. And the ones who are very much not are going to make it obvious. Like the person who replied fascism. That's okay. Yeah. So he very easily identified himself as someone who I don't want listening to the show. Someone said neurotypical, which was funny. John Hartman, shout out John Hartman. He said adults, which fair. Counter markets, shout out Venermani. He said free marketeers. And I like that. Free marketeers, I appreciate where they're coming from, but as we went into just a little bit ago, I think when you hold free markets as the end all be all, you leave yourself powerless to combat genuine evil. Anarchist homesteaders, Nelson said nomad. Shout out to Jason Stapleton with the Nomad Network and Wealth, Power, and Influence. We've been working with this idea of nomadic wealth, and it ties in very much with the king pilled idea that ultimately when you have become king pilled, you embrace the responsibility of taking care of your own life first. And one of the best ways in 2021 today in America, one of the best ways of ensuring that you have your own life under control is by creating what Jason has called nomadic wealth, where you control the source of your income, you're constantly building rare and specialized skills, and you've made that source of income mobile. So you can take it anywhere, you can do anything. That's true power. When you control your own income and you can take it anywhere and it's rare and specialized, you have power. Then it's just a numbers game. Then it's just a matter of building enough wealth and enough power and enough influence to where you can actually start creating the world that you want to live in. And that's our goal with this show, is to get people looking beyond the next political cycle and thinking on a generational time scale. Because I think there's two parts of this. The first part is recognizing the futility of politics and starting to plan, like actually employing the low time preference that libertarians claim to have, and realizing what that means for your own life, and then setting to actually improving your own life and making yourself the type of person that other people would want to learn from, or that other people would value input from. And the other part is, what is the best way of organizing a society? And people try to make this a moral conversation, and it just is not a moral conversation. When you make it a moral conversation, you invite the input of other people, and you don't have any, like, especially when your position is anybody should do what they want as long as they aren't hurting other people. You've kind of just sidelined yourself in your own conversation, because now you're not going to, your ideas just aren't going to compete in a conversation like that. Ultimately, this isn't a moral conversation. This is an engineering discussion. It's just, if I said, what's the best way to build an effective automobile, people wouldn't take that as a moral question. They wouldn't be like, well, your goal is, you need to make sure that you're doing it in the right way so that, I don't know, so people aren't getting hit by cars or something. Like, that's a weird angle to take that conversation. You would be like, what's the best way to build the best car? So you might say, well, what is the best car? That's the conversation that I'm wanting to have. What makes the best car? That's not a moral question. That's an engineering question. And that's the conversation that people need to be having about the state. What's going to replace it? What works the best? Not what's the most morally right, but what works best. So once you've had that conversation, once you've realized that's the conversation to be had, rather, then you start asking, then that's where the libertarian answer comes in. Well, this is what we're trying to create. We're trying to get to a world where property rights are respected absolutely, and where people are incentivized to follow the NAP. And there's an enforcement mechanism for people who aren't. That's our end goal. How do we get there? What do we need to create to facilitate that process? That's the end goal, is the moral part, but you need an engineering process to get to that moral part. And people, an idea that I'm wrestling with right now, like I've said in the past, that politics and religion are the same thing. And so when you're talking about the engineering, like engineering the ideal governance structure, and I'm saying this isn't a moral question, it's just an engineering question. I realize that there seems to be a conflict there, where I'm saying that politics is religion, and when you're engineering the appropriate governance structure, that sounds like politics. But I'm saying that politics happens later. The politics is what happens once you've managed to engineer that structure. And anyway, so I'm kind of rambling here with this, but that was, as I'm looking at all these answers from people talking about the way that they want to identify themselves in the post-libertarian world, I'm realizing that there isn't really a thread that ties any of this stuff together. It's kind of like people have been funneled through the two acceptable positions, the progressivism or conservatism, and then they'll kind of veer off from those two, and they create this third path, which is libertarianism. But when people leave that next node on the network, the libertarian node, they're going off in all different directions. They're branching off all over the place. And to a degree, I think that's pretty cool, because I think that there's room in this world, or there could be room for all sorts of different experiments, all sorts of different ways of organizing. And people can test all sorts of different theories. Ultimately, one's going to win out. And what I'm noticing with a lot of these answers that people have given is many of them are, so someone said anarchist homesteaders, free marketeers, nomad. A lot of these people seem like they want to go it on their own. Like, they don't want to be affiliated with a larger organization. And I like that, because I think that I think the next evolution of governance structures on Earth, there was the all the way through the Dark Ages, you had different structures, but they were all fundamentally monarchic in some form or fashion. And you had feudalism, and you finally wound up with republicanism, and we're going into democracy. There's going to be some sort of new technology, some new human governance technology. And I suspect, my intuition tells me that there isn't going to be a single one. I think that whatever happens over the next few years or decades is going to result in the atomization of tribes. Like, people are going to return to tribalism and split themselves out much more. And the internet is going to get, you're seeing this. Social media is like kind of a leading indicator of this. You're seeing now, we reached a point where there was like 2 or 3 major social media networks that everybody was on and that were completely global and universal. And now they're being corrupted and perverted and used as weapons. So people are all breaking off and creating their own. Jason created his Nomad Network, which is effectively a social media platform, but it's paywalled and it's just for a narrow niche of a specific type of person who has a specific set of goals. And I think that's the way of the future. I think increasingly people are going to start pulling away from these larger platforms. And at first I thought it was always going to be Facebook groups. But people are going to leave Facebook altogether. They're going to create their own groups. And it's going to be much more similar to the beginning years of the internet, where there was all these different forums that were all different and separate and not connected to one another. I think we're going that direction. And ultimately, each of those new social media platforms is going to become a government unto itself. As we reach a completely like universalized or globally connected world, people are going to stop identifying as much with the national, with a geographical location, and they're going to begin to identify with their digital location, with their digital communities. And in order to participate in those digital communities, you're going to have to meet a set of specific standards. And those standards are gonna be related to behavior. So you're starting to see an incentive for some form of law enforcement out of this. Like if you want to take Jason's Nomad Network, I could see an evolution of this where eventually, if you want to remain on that network, it depends upon you abiding by a specific moral code in your own personal life, a code of behavior. And if you don't, then you get thrown out of the network. And that ultimately, as people travel around the world, as maybe national borders have kind of fallen apart, and national governments aren't able to police their geographical communities as well because they're all bogged down in corrupt power struggles and everything. People are going to begin operating as representatives of their digital community, and if that digital community is going to vouch for you as like, hey, yeah, this guy's good, this guy's okay, they're going to want to ensure that your behavior doesn't besmirch the name of the community. And I think part of this is going to, like, in order to do this, you're basically going to need global video surveillance of some kind. And you can get into conversations with augmented reality and people being able to like sit in a community that all gathers together in a room, and they're all there remotely, but with like some sort of augmented reality technology that makes it look and feel like you're together in the same room. This is kind of the direction that I'm foreseeing things going. But to make that happen is going to require a tremendous amount of engineering and ingenuity too. People who are kind of trying to live in the future and understand what the future is going to look like, and then try to create the technology to allow that to happen. I think it's going to open up the potential for some awesome things. It's also going to be ripe for abuse. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for corrupt people trying to make a buck or trying to enforce their will on other people in bad ways. So ultimately, you're going to need to be able to fend for yourself. So it's going to be a fascinating blend of futurism and the past kind of wild west, where everyone's kind of on their own, isolated, sort of fending for themselves. But then they have these digital communities that connect you, and you can talk to anybody on the planet at any time. I think it's really fun to think about, but we need more people who are thinking that way, who are starting to think about building the future, building communities of the future, building governance structures of the future. And that starts with you even being qualified to do it. You have to have the skill set to do it. You have to have the time to do it. You have to have the resources to do it. And that you're not going to get to that point until you've checked out of the the kind of meaningless pursuits. People say, well, what does it hurt? We need different people on with different strategies. And so some people want to go the political route and try to take over the political party. And so, what's wrong with that? It's not that there's something wrong with it. It's that it's like the highest overhead for the lowest return possible. The cost of getting involved in that is immense. Like political mobilization, political activism is incredibly slow and clumsy, and you get bogged down in bureaucracy, and you're gonna spend all your time fighting with people like Nicholas Sarwark, like these pathetic little worms who are like a captain in the own little corner of their sandbox, but don't have any impact on the real world. But you have to try to wade through them to get anything done. It's the overhead is just immense, and you're running the risk of like getting the eye of Sauron pointed at you as a political dissident. And for what? Like you're gonna get a few more people who've heard about you, but what are you gonna offer them? You don't have anything to offer them. All you have is Dave Smith said explicitly, his goal is to spit that hot liberty fire at people. And that's it. That's all he has is just rhetoric. He's going to bring some rhetoric to the table. Whoop-de-doo. Okay, so someone's like, "Hey, I love your hot liberty fire shit. What now?" Nobody's thought that far. Nobody's thought about what you do after you hear that hot liberty shit and decide that you want to go in that direction. There's nowhere for it's a total open wilderness for people to start building in and actually creating solutions for the future. So those are my thoughts in the post-libertarian world. Like that's where post-libertarians, if you see yourself as a post-libertarian, this is where I want you thinking. This is where I want you focusing your efforts. I'm going to make myself the king of the post-libertarians, and I'm going to dictate what the post-libertarians do. Anyways, I've been going for a little while. You have anything else you wanted to say, Stephen?
No, in the supporting listeners group, I will put up my vision of the future, which is significantly different, but that's only for the supporting listeners.
That's right. There's a whole bunch of comments here that I want to make sure I catch up with because I don't like abandoning the chat in the middle of the episode. So for the balance of this episode, I'm gonna just kind of wade through these comments. And so if you, who knows what sort of conversation is going to come out of it, but those were the bulk of the thoughts that I had planned for the episode. So if you're ready to check out the episode now, you're welcome to.
I'm very curious. As I heard, there was a comment that when we mentioned part of the problem that the episode today was not good, and there was another episode that the rhetoric of Dave is increasingly poor. So I would love if anyone could chime in as to why today's episode was not good.
Yeah, I want to know.
And what the rhetoric is in general these days.
Yes, chime in if you listen to part of the problem today, then throw it in the chat. I'll get down to you here shortly as I read through this. So Jason Stopper said, an issue is libertarians live in the world they want, but not enter of this world. Yes, 100%. Free will is not real. It's not biblical, nor does it occur in real life. We only have freedom to respond to the conditions that surround us. Okay, well, I don't need to do the free will individualism episode anymore because Jason just summed it up in 2 sentences. Okay, sup kings. This I don't know how you pronounce your name, Mark Egan. It looks like Nagy spelled backwards. I think he's the one who commented on an episode here, the last episode we did, and he said, "Whoa, did I just get king pilled?" And that's what I like to see. Those are the comments that I want to see on the episodes. Tell me that you just got king pilled, and that Steven and I are super smart, and we have the answers to everything, and that more people need to be listening to us. That's
flattery will get you everywhere. Yeah, there was a comment that someone left on like a dance video, and I was wearing these guys. And he said, "Nice slides, King." And like, it just was my favorite comment that I've ever gotten on any video. Nice slides, perfect. King. God, I love it.
Okay, Property Liberty said, "Long time preference is why we will win. When our opponents are enslaved to the here and now, they can't plan for the future." Yes, but there needs to be actual long time preference, not rhetoric about long time preference. He says, "We will win because of that." Yes, we will.
Yes.
Thank you for helping combat my occasional bouts of despair, Popular Liberty. That's one thing that there's a few different people that we're going to talk to that I want to talk to them about the value of black pilling people. And like there's this thing like, well, I need to just say things as they are. I need to wake people up to just how bad things are. But if you run the risk of getting people black pilled, like is that worth it? Like to what extent is it necessary to wake people up to how bad things actually are? That'd be an interesting conversation I want to have with someone.
Yeah, don't do it. Don't do it. You know, someone in here is where oh yeah, I guess like the conversation is kind of talking about how you know, Dave is just doing the two sides of the same coin deal, and you know, but giving the benefit of the doubt to the left side of things, where it's like, you know, well, they mean well, and you know, I don't know if it's a matter of mean well or don't mean well. I'm not willing to give either one of those to those people. I just think that in the 90s, everyone was a Cowboys fan. I think, right? Wasn't that the 90s? I don't.
Yeah.
Shut up, you weren't born. But but people are just front runners, man. That's it. Like plain and simple, you know. And if somehow whatever we were saying was the prevailing culture and always was victorious, you know, a lot of people would be in support of that, and like people who are here in support of it, you know that they're either genuine or just natural contrarians and like being in the most obscure circle possible, which is like, you know, I wonder that, you know, I wonder that about myself. I just want to be in like the most isolated minority, you know, but or am I just really interested in what I think truth is, and not, you know, interested in being corrupted by popular opinion whatsoever? Certainly not Popular Liberty, because I love Popular Liberty. Which is funny because he's been killing this episode, but we just basically trashed half of his name in the beginning of the episode, which is just funny. You know what I mean? But basically, it's the same thing, kind of thing with cops. It's like, well, cops suck. It's like, well, cops are cops, and right now they suck because they are instructed to enforce laws as such. Like, and that's what they're going to do, and that's the kind of psychology that gets selected. You know, when you're looking for a police officer or somebody to enforce those laws, whatever they may be, they look with someone who is going to be content to have authority just for the sake of having authority, and will enforce anything that you put in front of them for the most part. And they will weed out somebody who is going to think too much for themselves, really. And so that's just what a cop is. And so, you know, easier said than done, but as opposed to railing against the cops, you know, the idea would be to control the cops. You know, if you
Right.
can just press a button and control but a cop is going to be a cop for the most part. And the same thing with, you know, the people attracted to the woke shit are the same people who are going to, you know, be stay at home, save lives. They're emotionally rewarded. They're going with the winning team, and they have the added bonus of the fact that they can feel like they're not on the winning team in some capacity, even though deep down they know that they're not receiving any, you know, negative consequences for their beliefs whatsoever. They're only getting dopamine. It's just dopamine 24/7.
They get the benefits of being winners and the benefits of being losers all at the same time. Because like if you lose, like you get there's some perks to losing. You get to like, you know, like if you went and you ran a race and you lost, like you're gonna get people who come up and they have sympathy for you, and they're like, you know, hey, you know, it's all right, you can get them next time. And obviously the cost of losing outweighs that, but you get some benefits to it. So what if you figured out a way to get all of the benefits of winning, but you also get all the benefits of losing too? Then you win either way. And that's what the woke people, that's the position that they're in. They get to pretend that they're oppressed victims and they get the benefits of being an oppressed victim, while they also get to completely run like rampage through society and get and accomplish whatever they want. They get both at the same time. It's honestly from just like a strategy perspective, it's kind of brilliant. It's got to feel amazing. Like you said, it's just dopamine nonstop. One just constant perpetual dopamine overload. I don't remember what you said before that, because that got me worked up, because I like that idea. But what were you saying just before that?
Well, no, that was in response to people talking about, I guess, the part of the problem episode today, Dave's current rhetoric that we asked about.
I saw that he tweeted something about how he was like, libertarians need to get over this idea that the what was it, that leftists mean well, and that left wingers mean well and right wingers are evil, or something like that. And I guess he took it like exactly the wrong way, where he's like arguing in favor of the fact that left wingers do mean well, and he's just trying to say, well, right wingers mean well too, or is he trying to say left wingers are also evil and right wingers? He's probably saying that it's this both sidesism, that they're both equally bad, and they some of them mean well and some of them mean it's just such a useless observation. It doesn't give you any direction. This whole like, well, we're third party and we're different than everybody else, and like, not only does it not give you any direction, but it puts you behind the eight ball, because now you're like, we're a different entity altogether, and we need to try to suck people from not just one side, but from both sides. And we need to overcome both of them at the same time. Like, I just, once you see the silliness in this idea that the left, that the left is good and bad and the right is good and bad, and what we need is something down the middle. Once you see the silliness in that, it's kind of like, how did I ever think otherwise? Popular Liberty is... Go ahead.
I did see one thing that was kind of interesting, but it was on Twitter. I didn't screenshot or anything like that, but it was Tho Bishop, I think, jumped in to one of Dave's tweets and was basically saying, yeah, it would have been great if he did this, within the Republican Party somehow. And yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
Dave didn't, I guess, they must be friends, Mises Institute connection or something like that. Dave just kind of made like a joke about it or something like that.
Was Tho saying that it would have been like, if you were to make this observation as someone with the Republican Party platform?
No, it was in terms of putting his political efforts not in the Libertarian Party, but within the Republican Party.
Right. So if he was to make that observation as a Republican, then is that what he was saying?
Well, I think this was tied to I think this was discussing the like Vin Armani. This maybe stemmed from that in terms of why putting political energy into the LP was useless. And I think I think Tho just kind of threw out there that he could have done it within the Republican Party.
Yeah. I tried to make a cut up. We'll talk about that later. I'm going to use your video skills. So Popular Liberty is really, really trying to get on our good side here and to stay there. Now he's talking about Randall Carlson. If you ever want to get on my good side, just bring up Randall Carlson. There is no quicker way to making me happy. He said, Matt, let me channel Randall Carlson for a moment. By understanding the laws of archotropism, you understand that you don't need a ton of TNT to blow up an ice dam. A single pinhole will do. Same thing with democracy. We don't need a ton of force. A pinhole in the ice dam will do, and then the rest is just the laws of nature. And I like where you're going with that. It's again, we're just trying to engineer something. You're setting up dominoes. You're getting a bunch of dominoes put in place and figuring out how to make like one little boop, poke one domino, and it knocks all the others down, and it gives you the result that you want. It's just engineering. You're just trying to engineer the ideal outcome. The surest way to not get, I remember what I was going to say earlier. The surest way to not get your ideal outcome is get people really wound up and lashing out at the state, because that's the quickest way to get the most oppressive version of the state, is when a whole bunch of people are lashing out at it. This is why this whole thing, like like advocating for people to resist the police, and like that all police are evil, and like again, your argument for why it's true or not true is irrelevant. What are the impacts of your word? What are the impact of your words? If people start treating the police like they're evil and start resisting, it's not like the police are just going to say, oh, I guess nobody likes us anymore. I guess we got to back down. Like it doesn't happen. You're in fantasy world if you think that's going to happen. What you're doing is you're creating a recipe for more chaos and more instability. And part of Popular Liberty's observation with archotropism is that the state feeds off of chaos. Whenever there's chaos, the state will inject itself to take more power to itself to try to create order out of that chaos. And then when there isn't any chaos to be had, the state will create the chaos so that it can step in and bring order. This is the whole relationship between organized crime and the government. It's why they always wind up becoming the same thing. Organized crime creates the chaos, the state steps in, creates the order, and then, benefits and has all the more power for having done it until the organized crime creates more chaos and they step in and get more order. And this is the natural tendency. This is why you want the most ordered, stable society possible, so that people who will try to use chaos to give themselves power have nowhere to turn. They have no outlet for it. You're engineering a solution that's as ordered as possible, as orderly as possible, which means peace, consistency, stability, security, all of those things. And anybody who tries to generate chaos will just be harming themselves. You break that feedback loop. You cut it in half. So when you encourage people, hey, let's go storm, metaphorically, let's go storm the gates, take over the LP and launch a grenade in the face of the state and show them that you don't know who you're messing with here. We're going to show them how eager we are to fight, and that we're going to fight for our rights. You can't oppress us. You're going to get the exact opposite of what you want. This is the root of Moldbug's prescription for pacifism. Political power is not a human right. You have no right to power. No one else does either. Power is just in the hands of whoever has it, and they'll take more to the extent that they can. Right now, the state has power. The state has an abundant amount of power. And every attempt that you make to fight them gives them another opportunity to take even more power. If you believe that the state is evil and the state should have less power, then the last thing that you should be doing is going and fighting it on its own terms. You have to, if you want to resist, you have to check out. That's the best form of resistance. Starve it of energy. Starve it of power by starving it of attention, by checking out of it, and by focusing on you and building your community.
Which is why I think even you're being kind of generous when you talk about the political path, just not necessarily even being the slowest to show any results, but really you're fuel for everything that you can't stand. In like evidenced by the fact that that I'd honestly love to talk to the LP or someone in the LP who could provide sort of like a roadmap, because as it stands, it kind of looks like there has been like 3 centimeters of thought about this whole thing, and so if I'm taking the evidence for what it is, it looks like they didn't think about anything in the way of a plan. So like rest assured that if anything is to come of that, it's only gonna be like flipped around, to power, the state. I'll use the word the state, just to make libertarians happy. But to fuel the state and all other awful shit that is like surrounding us. Right.
Like I'd love to ask them, what's your plan for 2026?
What are you guys doing?
Thump. What's your plan for 2026? Because everyone's going to think 2022 and 2024. What's your plan for 2026? What are you going to do then? Have you planned that far?
There's a graph that someone, and I couldn't really make heads or tails of it, but it was where does your LP Mises Caucus money go to? And it was a graph of just breaking down, who received the money. And I can't tell if this was put up by the Mises Caucus or if it was put up by somebody slamming the Mises Caucus. I didn't really get a chance to look at it, but that discussion, I guess, is at least starting to be had. And it's just interesting. It's an interesting question. It's like, well, what are you guys doing?
I know that Sarwark, the slimy little eel that he is, said something. He took some sort of shot at Michael Heiss for, like, he said he was talking about the Mises Caucus, and he said something about you guys are getting involved in this, so you can enable the leader of your caucus to not have to have a job or something like that. Basically, like Michael Heiss surviving off of donations. And I was like, that, like, first of all, if I believed in the message, like if I believed in the party being what it is and saw this as a like a viable avenue for change, I think I would want the guys in leadership positions like that to be able to like work on it full time. So I would want them to survive off of donations. Like I would have no problem with that. Sure. And of course, see here, I'm falling into the trap of taking Sarwark's words on their face and actually imagining him to be someone coherent. But it was just like it just highlighted to me like that's the route that he's going right away. He's already gonna get you bogged down into trying to defend Michael Heiss for like being able to survive just off of donation. Like how does someone possibly, this is just the first in many of these just dirty, drawn out, scummy battles that you're going to have to fight just to try to take over the party. To get what? Like, how is it possibly worth it to go through all of this stuff, to stoop to the level of having to fight with Nicholas Sarwark just to take over the LP? I just, oh man, I remember being at a point where if I'd seen people trying to take over the LP like this with the Mises Caucus, I would have been all on board. Let's say I was there. And in people talking about doing this, I was there, and I remember understanding the vision. But it's like it just all it took was just thinking. This is the thought that broke it for me. This is when I checked out of the Mises Caucus. I was like, I'm a libertarian who claims that the state is not the answer and that people turning to political parties as a solution is a problem. And now I'm committing myself to an organization where I'm going to go around with a political party, knocking on doors and calling or whatever, contacting people to talk to them about joining my political party, directed at telling people they don't need political parties. I was like, how could I live with myself? I would feel like a complete goofball. I'm the goober walking around saying, we use our political party to tell you that you don't need political parties. And then Dave just says it. He just outright says it. Talking to Hotep Jesus, he says, our goal is to use the system to tell people that they don't need to use the political system. And I guess one way to look at this is if these people, like people that are going this route, clearly are they're not equipped for being all that productive in any other route if they think that this is viable. So I guess we could look at this as they're just getting themselves out of our way. So they're like making sure that that it's only the best minds that are focused on actually solving things. Anyways, I got to get through these comments here. So supporting listeners group. Go follow Steven at Messina Inc. and tweet him and ask him for the link to the supporting listeners group.
Son of a gun.
The best part of engineering our ascent is that we won't ascend at all. Power is relative. The Democrats are just going to fall relative to us. We put the stumbling block in their way, and the rest is gravity, archotropism. Interesting. I need to think about that more. Oh, geez. Comments just... People have been talking a lot, and the comments just jumped way down. Okay. Wyman wants to donate. There isn't a link yet. To be completely honest, there isn't a link yet, but there will be. We appreciate you wanting to donate, and we're gonna open that up here soon. Mises Caucus Dave is definitely getting more cringe. Yeah, very much so. Popular Liberty says Dave's future plan is his current plan. Yep, basically. Amy says we will raffle off an Eastwood original of the first 50 people who join the supporting listeners group. Oh yeah, that's right. You're gonna get like this right here, an original product of the artistic brilliance of my son. My 6-month-old son, he is phenomenal. He is the best human being in the world, and he makes the best art. It's absolutely beautiful, and I'm proud to have it displayed here. If you want your own, here you go.
Nice use of diagonals. I like it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it was really funny watching him make it with Amy. He did it partly with his fingers, partly with a paintbrush, and partly with his stomach. He was like pushed up against the table, and he got a bunch of paint on his belly, on his bare belly, and then it kind of got pushed on it. He was pretty creative. He was using everything that he could.
I like that.
Okay. Oh man, these. So I need to come up with a better way to try to manage the chat on here, because it's all jumping all over the place, and it's really hard to actually read it. I don't know how people normally do this. Today, today Dave was basically just doing the tired two sides of the same coin crap. He was still trying to reach out to the left and still trying to get them to come to our side, trying to show the state is still just doing the same thing and just using them, which is kind of true, but as Popular Liberty says, he still thinks many of them mean well. And I think that many of them think that they mean well, but you have to realize that this is just part of the whole libertarian message just leaves itself open for this. Again, it's a suit. It's an empty suit that will be populated and taken over and controlled by leftist influence if you reach out to them at all. If you let them in any sense whatsoever, they will take it over. Robert Conquest's second law of politics is that any organization not explicitly right-wing will eventually become left-wing. I don't know how you can... Like that lots of people know about that. They understand that, and they'll even recognize it. The people that do this both sidesism, they'll recognize this dynamic, that any organization not explicitly right-wing will eventually become left-wing. How could you recognize that and then say, oh, but they're both the same? They're clearly not both the same. Clearly one of them is perpetually imperial and domineering, and the other one is feeble and impotent. So it seems like there's a threat on one side and not on the other. So maybe we shouldn't be open to facilitating and participating with the side that's explicitly imperial in every sense of the word. I don't know. It seems like we're in an age where Buck Johnson from Counterflow says that we're in a post-fact age. I think that's his term, post-fact, and I gotta admit that's pretty compelling. Okay, scrolling down here, Jason Sopper says you can take a black pill and a white pill. Understanding the situation is not good, but having hope is possible. I think understanding the situation is not good, but having hope is possible. I think that position is the definition of the white pill. Like the white pill is recognizing that things are really, really bad, but that there is hope. Basically, as long as you have hope, then you're white pilled. Part of what it was, as I was having this branding conversation yesterday, one thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a breakdown of the relationship of all the pills to each other, because we call ourselves king pilled. So we're gonna demonstrate where king pilled is in relation to the other ones. I think that's gonna be fun. And okay, Popular Liberty says his name is a joke. Liberty is whatever is popular. Okay, that's good. I like that. Wyman is gonna change his name to Liberty Lover. You will get banned from the chat if your name is Liberty Lover. I don't care who you are. Amy, if you change your name to Liberty Lover, I'm banning you from the chat. I don't care. I do not care. Liberty Lover is the worst phrase in the world. The popular definition of liberty is whatever is popular. Property liberty is the left's definition of liberty. I named myself after the enemy. Okay, I see what he's doing. Amy says, shout out my wife, Amy. She says, being a liberal is literally having your cake and eating it too, then complaining about fat shaming after the calories count. Oh, that's funny. Good job, babe. Wyman says, "Bahaha, you think he'd do that since he wants to model himself on Ron Paul so much?" That's another. Okay, I got to rant here again. This whole idea.
That was a reference to the thing about I said about Tho and doing it in within the Republican Party.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense. This is other people have said this, but I've got to throw my voice in here too. Ron Paul ran as a Republican. That's what he. So if you're trying to replicate what Ron Paul did, then you would run as a Republican. If you think that you're trying to recreate the Ron Paul energy, you would run as a Republican. Just like that's just to put it that way. But then this notion that Rand Paul somehow represents the example of someone who tried to run as a Republican and it just didn't work, and that's the reason why running as a Republican again couldn't work. That I was having a conversation with Tho and Popular Liberty on Twitter about Rand Paul, and Popular Liberty says that Rand Paul he compared him to Tom Brady, and he said basically that Rand Paul has infiltrated the Republicans in the same way that Tom Brady infiltrates a football field. That he's there because people want him there, and voters have put him there. Fans have put him there, and but I said in fairness to Tom Brady, Rand Paul is probably a little more like Matthew Stafford. He was highly rated as a young guy. He's toolsy as all hell, but he kind of disappears in the big games, and he ultimately won't ever really accomplish much, but people will remember him fondly. So that was my crossing up. I just found out that Tho is apparently a huge fantasy football player, football bettor, which is my total like alternate lifestyle. People that know me for politics stuff don't realize how much into football I am, but it was beautiful to me to find out that Tho is as well. But anyway, so this idea that Rand Paul somehow has proven that the Republican Party is not worth getting involved in, I think that somebody that makes that observation is just revealing how much he does not understand the nature of politics, the nature of the political system, which should disqualify that person from occupying a position of leadership within a political party. And of course, again, I'm talking about Dave Smith. He's the one who made that comparison. But I don't want this to be a bitch at Dave Smith podcast because we have bigger and better things to talk about than that. But it's getting really, really aggravating seeing how many people are just falling in line with him. Because if he wants to go do what he's going to do, that's fine. It's the people that he's dragging in with him that I feel for. That like they respect him, they respect what he has what he's accomplished because he's a brilliant comic, he's a brilliant communicator. He's a very, very good messenger. He messages very, very well. And he could be so great if he first of all, if he was intellectually honest and continued, he didn't rest on his laurels intellectually. If he updated his political, his intellectual operating system, and didn't just assume that because he's read a bunch of Murray Rothbard books, now he understands everything there is to understand about politics. If he continued the intellectual growth, if he continued reading books, and it was obvious that he was, and encountering new ideas and embracing them, there's like the sky's the limit for him. But he's choosing to go this route, and it's increasingly difficult for me to believe that he doesn't have ulterior motives, because he can't be this I don't want to insult the guy. He can't be this naive to make the arguments that he's making and to go the route that he's going. It just, I really hope that we can pull as many people as possible away from going down that route, because I think it's really going to end in an ugly way. Josiah says, identify as whatever your specific money-making community building is centered around and nothing else. Right. People are always going to identify with a community, with a network, with a group. They're always going to identify that way, just because that's how we're hardwired. And people, there's the Christian perspective. People are going to identify as Christian, but even at a more beyond that, there's always going to be some sort of a whether it's your family or your extended family or your network, the people you. If you ask someone, who are you? Like, what do you do? That's like a really common way to get to know someone, and they tell you the company that they work for and the industry that they work in. If I want to understand you, I find out what sort of people you surround yourself with and what things that you do. That's always going to be there. So I think this idea that ideologies are bad and we have to get rid of ideologies and we can't identify as anything, I think it's just unnatural. It's that's never going to be a thing. Humans are always going to identify with a group, with an organization, and it's better to recognize that, again, accept the world as it is, and try to create the world we want to live in, rather than trying to invent something that just isn't possible. People are always going to have an ideology. They're always going to believe in it and identify with it. And so it's as we enter this new era of tribalism, of I don't know, neo-feudalism, or whatever the future holds, people are going to identify with something like this, and it's better rather than not. Okay, almost to the bottom of the comments here. Oh no, I wasn't. It just jumped down again. Okay, I don't think I'm gonna make it through all the comments here because you guys are just too you guys are too prolific. Does this mean guns are ultimately useless against the state? This much of a leviathan? Yeah, you're not going to use your guns against the state. Yes.
Let's just get that out of the way. Let's just get out of the way.
The Second Amendment doesn't matter. Like Vin Armani pointed this out. He said, people talking about, oh, they're going to come for our guns. He's like, they already locked you in your house. You don't need your guns. They don't need to take your guns away from you.
Your
guns aren't going to do anything for you.
Yeah. It's hilarious. Yeah.
Okay, Ben Davidson at Suspicious Observers. I'll appreciate Randall Carlson so much more. Okay, cool. That's another thing that I want to talk about. Like we talked a lot about politics and stuff lately, and we'll continue to do that. But another thing that I want to get into is talking about history and the historical stories that you may not have learned in school. And if you are familiar with Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock, then you'll really enjoy some of the conversations that we're going to have on here. Amy says, I'd rather be led, quote unquote, by someone without a job than a used car salesman and lawyer. Yeah, that's right. Being anti-political is naive. Miguel in the chat. What's up, Miguel? Being anti-political is naive. As we have said in previous chats, they don't understand anarchy. Yep. Popular Liberty says libertarians are allies that just have bad leadership. As long as they're identifying as libertarians, I'm not going to see them as allies. I need to see them realize the flaw in identifying as a libertarian and be willing to move beyond it before I can see them as an ally. Because if you're trying to bend things back toward libertarianism, it's we've dug extensively through all the reasons why that's flawed. So as long as someone still wants to identify themselves as a libertarian, I think that they still have baggage that they need to get rid of before they prove that they're truly ready to start creating the future. We're just being a little bit of semantics here. I'm not going to say, oh, if you identify as a libertarian, I won't affiliate with you at all. But if we're going to talk about the people that we see as allies and the people that we don't, I think someone who still wants to identify as a libertarian, it just reveals to me where their mind is, and that I feel like they haven't fully embraced the king pill. Dave seems well-meaning. Ramsey Paul is actually getting folks to move near him in Northwest Arkansas. That's cool. I do think Dave is well-meaning. I know that we're hard on him, and I'm disappointed in him, but I do think that he means well, ultimately. I just think that he's gotten himself pot committed in public, and so it's hard for him. He's backed himself into a difficult corner where it's easier to just keep doing what he's doing than to acknowledge that he may have started out in a misguided direction and he wants to adjust course. I think it's that ultimately is going to be a matter of pride, kind of, that's not a criticism necessarily, just an observation. Let's see. Scrolling down here. Vin Armani's stream about the zombie apocalypse is straight fire. Yeah, go to Vin Armani on Twitter and watch his recent stream he did on Twitter about the zombie apocalypse. It was very good. And then it's interesting. There's a new zombie movie coming out on Netflix. I just watched the preview for it this morning. About there's some huge like zombie apocalypse, and these zombies are like super smart and fast and capable, and they've completely taken over Vegas. And then these guys have to go in there and get $200 million out of some like under a casino in Vegas or something like that. And it's just interesting seeing this. It's like predictive programming that we're now we're entering into an era that's effectively a zombie apocalypse. And and now they're coming out with a zombie movie. Kind of like last year, we were going into these lockdowns and they came out with a movie about a coronavirus that turned into a global pandemic that was really, really bad, and there was lockdowns and everything. It's just, once you start seeing the code in the matrix, it's creepy. But go watch Vin Armani's stream about that. And almost reached the bottom here. Libertarians need their king. Your job is to supply their demand. But first, they need to recognize that they need their king. And they'll recognize that when they see it, but they have to have their eyes open to see it. So there's kind of a two-step process there. You have to help them realize they need a king, and you have to provide that king for them. And maybe those two steps can happen at the same time, but there's multiple things going on here that we need as many people that are working on this problem as possible. Fire from Amy. Okay, Matt. Oh, Jesus Christ. This thing keeps jumping around. Matt, you're failing to see some libertarians have liberal theory as their foundations. Yeah, that's it, I don't know that I'm failing to see that. That's kind of explicitly my position, that libertarianism is really just liberalism taken to its fullest extent. Their libertarians' critiques of everyone else is that they aren't good enough liberals in the liberal sense. The original liberal vision is what the original liberal vision is what libertarians are holding people up against and saying you're not good enough in that, you're not meeting that standard. This concept of the idealized individual that has become, that's the result of constant reformation within the church, to the point where they reformed God right out of the throne and placed this idealized concept of the individual in that place. And that's what liberalism is built around. It's built around a like worship of the individual, like a capital I. And libertarians they still operate from that perspective, that the goal of all of this is to free the sovereign individual and allow the individual to experience like full liberty and full realization of it's basically like deification. They're trying to achieve deification of the individual, and that just, as long as you're operating from that perspective, it's like a block that has to we have to chip away at this dam. And once that dam cracks and it releases, and you can get all these ideas that are backed up, you get them all to flow through, then or at least this is how it was for me. Then I suddenly like everything clicked. Then Christianity snapped into view for me. Understanding the gospel, understanding the Bible, all of that became clear at the exact same moment that I became king-pilled in the political sense as well. And that's kind of where I derived the idea, the name of the show, King-Pilled. That's where it came from, was having these two realizations at the same time. The recognition of the nature of the King of Kings, along with the nature of human social organization always tending toward a monarchy, and recognizing that we have to embrace that and work with it and accommodate it rather than fighting against it. Anyways,
I don't want to interrupt, but I think you actually may have succinctly described the name of the show.
What did I say?
Like just now.
Now? Oh,
I think you did it in a couple sentences as opposed to like 2.5 hours. Multiple attempts at explaining it in 2.5 hours. I think
I don't
was
even
listening to you. I'm like, I think he's gonna stop like pretty soon. You know, just
Yeah.
like within a measure of like seconds. I'm like, this will not last an hour. What he's saying, and I just held my breath, and I was just like, yep, I think he just concisely described the name of the show. Very good.
Well, good, because I don't remember what it was, so I'll go back and
If
listen
you want to
later
know
on,
the
and we'll
name
build
of
on it.
yes, trawl back through this episode. We will refer you back to in the future, and
Yes.
listen to the very end when Matthew describes it. We will not give a timestamp. Unsubscribe.
One thing I've learned from this episode is that if I say I'm going to get through all the comments before we end, I'm locking myself into potentially going way too long because you guys are chatty and it's difficult to get through all of this, and I'm so I'm not going to do that in the future, but I'll make sure that I come back and read the chat afterwards, because it's one thing that I've done in the past is I wasn't able to watch the chat while we were going live. So I've gone back through and I've read it. So I really appreciate your guys' input, your guys' feedback. We really enjoy this little community that we're building up here. And our viewership has held pretty steady all the way throughout this. We're almost 2 hours long and people are still here. So we must be doing something right. I just want to read these last couple of comments here from Miguel, and then we'll get out of here. Miguel says, speaking of liberals, human reason plus human progress plus cooperation equals modernization is the basic liberal assumption. Yes. Okay. So the basic liberal assumption is that human reason plus human progress plus cooperation equals modernization. They have the belief that they understand human reason better than other theories or ideologies. Okay. Yeah. Liberals reject the idea of how the world is. They are grounded in ideas of how the world should be. And that's okay. Yeah. And that's where if you treat as sovereign the idea of human reason, that's the idealized individual, the capital I individual that is at the core of the liberal worldview. And not liberal in the sense that Miguel is using it here, and kind of like the classic sense of the term. To treat reason as the highest order, or as somehow sanctified, is to imagine the ideal individual who has perfect reason and is able to reason flawlessly through any problem and achieve the truth through reason. It's really what they're describing is they're rebuilding God in man's image, because like the ideal individual who's able to perfectly employ reason to attain the truth, it would effectively be a deity, would be God. And the problem with this is that human beings don't lead with reason. Human beings, again, like the Heidegger concept of thrownness, that human beings are, before they can employ reason, they've already been inscribed upon. They've already had like an operating system that's running in the back. So reason is only ever going to be reactive then. So when someone makes a decision, you make your decision emotionally. Your emotions make the decision before you've created the rational justification for it. You create the rational justification after the fact to justify the emotional decision that you made. But your decision was made by your intuition, which is not necessarily reasonable by any stretch of the imagination. So it's liberalism is ultimately kind of like a Tower of Babel phenomenon, where human beings tried to take God out of the picture and recreate him in the form of the idealized individual. And libertarianism is rooted in that. So if you're trying to solve the problem of libertarianism, so to speak, you have to go back before the ideas that libertarianism was born out of. Libertarianism is not biblical in any sense at all. It takes a distortion and selective reading of the Bible to think that libertarianism, with the individual and free will and all that it's biblical. It's not at all. It's a derivation of liberalism, which is fundamentally atheistic. So there's a reason that it's pretty uncommon to see Christian libertarians. It's becoming a little more common, but typically Christians tend to be conservative, and there's a reason for that. this idea of a third way is really just liberalism was born out of Christianity, out of an evolution of Christianity. And then people are like, well, modern liberals are getting too corrupt, and so we're going to pull away from them. And that's where you got libertarianism. Libertarianism was an adaptation, an evolution of liberalism, which was itself a product of either atheist thinkers or people trying to reason beyond God. And anyway, so I'm getting tired here. My brain is starting to turn itself off. So I appreciate you guys hanging out here with us, you know, weeding through some of these issues with us. I've really enjoyed following the chat here. And go follow Popular Liberty again on Twitter. I shouted him out last episode. This episode here, I'll do it again. I think he's at Populist Liberty. And then you can follow me on Twitter at RealKingPilled. Like the show here, please like this episode and share the show. And then subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're gonna have some other outlets coming up here soon as we get this whole branding and logo thing figured out. And yeah, we will be back. Today's Tuesday. We'll be back on Thursday. Thursday afternoon, we'll record another episode here. And until then, deuces.